Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Kent. Can you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Tableau?
Sure. About myself, what I do at Tableau. Maybe it'd be good to just get a poll of the audience. We'll try to make this informal and engaging. Who here has used Tableau before?
Woohoo.
Oh, wow. I wasn't sure what that response was going to be like, but that makes my life a little easier, maybe. Yeah, so for me personally, I'm Canadian. Thank you. We're always out there. I went to school in Canada at a small college in Nova Scotia called the Centre of Geographic Sciences. And from there, I was hired by Esri, and I worked there for about 10 years. Then I decided to move to Seattle with my wife and young son, and found Tableau. So that's how I ended up at Tableau. And at Tableau, I'm the product manager, or one of the product managers that works on maps and sort of all things spatial. My sort of principal responsibility is helping to craft the vision and roadmap for what we do with maps and spatial data at Tableau. And of course, I really am a customer advocate at heart. So you're going to find me, at conferences, on Twitter, on our forums, talking with the sales team, talking with our marketing team, and just sort of drilling into what it is our customers want to do with Tableau and how we can sort of broaden our reach within our product. So that's sort of who I am and what it's all about. And for the few of you who don't know about Tableau, we're a data visualization company helping people see and understand data. So we have sort of standard products, desktop, server, hosted online. We've also recently released a new product called Tableau Prep, which helps you sort of clean and manipulate data, prepare it for analysis. A quick side tangent, Hannah. If anyone reads the Harvard Business Review, there was a study recently that said that 80% of the time that analysts are working on data is spent cleaning and preparing the data, and only 20% on the actual analysis. Mm-hmm. I mean, we took that to heart, and we're like, thank goodness we made a new product that's sort of going at preparation and cleaning the same way that we went at data visualization. We've tried to make it highly visual, highly interactive, but there's a clear need. So, Tableau really is more of an analytics platform now with sort of the full life cycle of data, if you will. So, yeah, that's an intro for you.
Yeah, great. So talking about your customers, how do customers use maps in Tableau, and why are they such an important feature?
Sure. Tableau customers, so every time I find a Tableau customer and they figure out that I work on maps at Tableau, they're always like, I love Tableau maps. Like they almost want to give me a hug. Like, it really feels like it had an impact on them just by using this feature in our product. And I think the reason for that is that working with maps in Tableau is just so easy, right? Like maps are not a new visualization type, but building them has been a difficult thing for some people, or just, I don't even know where to get started for many people. Especially when you think of sort of the core Tableau sort of target audience, right? Like a business analyst, finance analyst, healthcare people. They may not have been exposed to mapping applications or GIS tools. And to get a tool which they could just drag and drop and build things has really been, just really changed the way they work with data. In fact, I have some examples here. I'm just going to cycle through them a little bit. I don't have a whole lot to say about each of them, but I think they're a good assortment of the types of sort of comprehensive dashboards that people can build. And one thing you're going to notice is that it's not just a map, right? When I talk to customers, they may say like, "Oh, I'm building this map," but they're really just building a dashboard, right? Or they're building something bigger than just the map. The map may be the focal point, so that's the way that people think about it. But they really want to build something that's more synchronized, but also adheres to some best practices, right? I know it's blasphemy, but sometimes you shouldn't use a map. And so with Tableau, we really try to focus on best practices and making these things sort of all synchronized together. One of the things here in this map, again, when we talk about how people use maps in Tableau, is that we built in geographic data into the product. So in the United States, most common geographies, so long as you have the name of the place, you can build that map in Tableau. So if it's states, counties, your zip code, congressional districts, CBSAs, MSAs, airports by code, area codes, Ryan, help me out. There's others. And globally, around the world, we have all administrative data sort of built into the product. So, this example of Germany, right? Like someone didn't need to connect to a spatial data set like a shapefile to visualize these boundaries. We have that built in, the county equivalent in Germany. So that's part of what makes it so easy to use. And then, I'll just kind of cycle through again another sort of similar example, right? Where although the map really stands out as this like impressive visual, there's a ton of other related information and sort of key visual indicators that make this sort of a more comprehensive view than just the map. In this example, these are some of my favorite examples, which is why we're showing them. I really like this one because, for a few reasons. One, it's working with a very detailed data set, these census level boundaries. And for most of our customers, they really care about census data. Like it's almost like a standard. It's very familiar. It doesn't change too often. It's not like a zip code where, it could change or be split or across state boundaries or something, right? And in this visualization, so they're working with this very detailed data set, and you can now bring that into Tableau natively, right? So Tableau supports connecting to spatial data sets, and so it's very easy for someone to go to, say, the census and download the appropriate files and bring those into Tableau. And then, of course, just the ease in which you can sort of compare multiples and things like that, it really is differentiating. I think there might be one or two more here. Again, this example, this just shows binning in Tableau. So it's very easy to create bins like hexagonal bins or square bins or bins of your shape of choice just by using a few calculations in Tableau, and you can build maps like this that have become quite popular. Mm-hmm. Here's a last example that I really like. It's just so darn beautiful. I just like looking at it. Plus, I just want to go back to Hawaii. But yeah, in this case, again, the spatial component are those boundaries of the islands that make up Hawaii. But clearly, there's so much more to the visualization and how people work with maps in Tableau.
Yeah. Thanks. These examples are awesome.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot today about the emergence of massive data sets. What does the emergence of real-time location data mean for a business intelligence platform like Tableau?
Yeah, anytime this kind of question, right, around like, hey, there's new data, there's a new source of data, there's something about this data that's special. Real-time is that sort of characteristic. But Tableau's a data company, right? Like our stock ticker is data. We walk around the office and we all wear shirts that say we love data because we really love data. And when people talk about real time or spatial, to us it's just all data, and we want people to use our product and our platform to visualize it. So when we have a new challenge like massive real-time data, for us it's just a massive opportunity, right? Like, yes, there's going to be some work that we need to do, and there's definitely challenges around working with real time. Certainly as it relates to performance and rendering and animation and these kinds of things, especially data that, when you have a data set that updates frequently, changes, the thing that I know at Tableau we think a lot about is what is the best visual practice, right? Like static data can mean a lot different things than data that's moving, right? And so when you have data that's updating so frequently, how do we present that information? And we want to do we don't just want to spew out data. We want to find the right level of detail, the right aggregation, what's the fastest way to an insight. So we really spend a lot of time, thinking about that when it comes to, any type of problem, right? Like what is the best practice and how do we show the right level of detail How do we bring sort of answers to the user's questions? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Also, that's really like the crux of it, right? Like for us, anytime anyone's talking about data, we want to say, oh, bring that into Tableau. And another thing I want to add is, about 2 years ago, Tableau acquired a database startup company from a university in Munich called Hyper. And we replaced our in-memory data engine inside of Tableau with this new Hyper engine. And one of the reasons we did that is because we've done some prototyping and we've seen that we can do massive data updates to existing tables and show I know you got to have a pretty beefy machine, I'll admit that. But I've seen millions of rows updated in a second on a table or a visualization. So every second, another million rows could be added. And this is the type of scale and the type of technology to match the problem that you need to be thinking through. So Tableau is definitely thinking about these kinds of problems.
Yeah. So your users are creating these geographic visualizations, many of which could probably potentially be created by different GIS functions. How does Tableau position itself in reference to other GIS companies?
Yes. Perhaps my favorite question, Hannah. Part of it's because I came from Esri, and I went to school, and all we did, I went to school for 4 years to learn GIS. Can you imagine spending 4 years to learn, BI or data viz or analytics? It's just kind of expected that it's easy to use, and it's sort of ready out of the box, right? And so a little bit of history then when we talk about sort of GIS and how it relates to what we're doing at Tableau. When I started at Tableau, which was about 3.5 years ago, I talked with some of our senior product folks and people from the sales team. I started talking with customers, and the common sort of stuff, responses that I heard from a lot of these people was that, oh, you're going to need a GIS tool to do that, or you're going to have to pre-process the data, and they're really implying, use something that knew more about sophisticated techniques for working with spatial data. Or even you'd hear people like, Anya and Zen Masters, who are sitting over here in the second row, who'd be like, oh, you just hack your way around that. We can break it and put it back together. You make it work. So again, people had found all these workarounds and solutions to doing more sophisticated spatial analysis because they simply thought oh, well, Tableau will never do that, right? And that was sort of the message because, there are a lot of customers who care deeply about spatial data or who've invested in their spatial data infrastructure, and they want to integrate all these systems, right? And I think that message is definitely evolving from Tableau's perspective. So where once upon a time, we're not a GIS and we're not doing GIS things. If you look at what we do now, well, even 5 years ago, if you just think about what are the 80-20 rule, what are the 80% of things that people do in mapping applications? You can already do those in Tableau. When I say we've built in administrative data for the world, states and counties or equivalents for all the countries and postal codes and all those things, city level data, getting that into Tableau or into your application is really the hard part for a lot of people. So you can easily build a choropleth, thematic, proportionally symboled map in Tableau. You can switch between a boundary representation or a point representation. And those are sort of the basics, right? But if you're building, how many maps do you see that basically have just a single interactive layer, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is most common. And so I would say Tableau already does a lot of GIS-like things. But we're not trying to be a GIS tool. We're not trying to emulate a traditional GIS user experience, certainly not. With us, we're really about this ease of use, rapid sort of data discovery and exploration, and that is sort of I mentioned earlier today that's a bit of sort of the disruptive way in which Tableau approached the problem, right? to make things so easy and to keep people in the flow of their analysis. So, about GIS, sort of versus what we're doing. It's not really a versus because, I already think that we can do so much of what a GIS is leaned on for. And I will say there is a line like, yeah, we're never going to go do that, 100th type of specialized geo application, that you find in a GIS tool.
Right.
But if you want to visualize geographies, you want to start to understand proximity and distance and a spatial relationship, well, all of our customers want to do that. They ask about it all the time, right? So we're going to find ways to enable that.
Yeah.
The other thing, when we talk about sort of traditional GIS capabilities, look at some of the things that we've done recently in response to this customer demand. So in our 2018.1 release, we support spatial data directly from SQL Server. In our 2018.2 release, we're going to support the spatial predicate st-intersects and enabling that via a spatial join capability, so you can actually do spatial aggregation in Tableau. People want to count, like the points and the polygons, right? The birds in the watershed. I talk about this stuff all the time across industries. I showed an example this morning that was offshore oil and drilling in and around the North Sea. But of course, those all happen inside of these blocks or offshore leases, and the shells of the world want to go look at and aggregate the information within those custom boundaries.
Right.
So yeah, those are things that we're enabling. So if you went back that 5 years ago, where people were saying, oh, we're not a GIS, we're not going to do those things. Quite clearly we are.
Yeah.
We're doing some of the things that were thought to be just the GIS world, right? But I still think it's now a bigger thing, right? We're a data tool, and if you have a spatial question, well, of course we need to enable that. Hannah, don't stop me yet. I know you're looking at me like you're going.
Keep going, please.
But when you think about data, all data has some location component, right? So we're the data tool, and our customers say, I want to visualize my data, I want to ask more questions. How do they get at that location component, right?
Yeah.
Well, for Tableau, we recognize that as well. And when I say we can connect to native spatial sources, it's because we made spatial a type in Tableau. So numbers, strings, dates, spatial. These are native types that you can work with in Tableau. And my understanding is that other BI products, they just don't do that, right? There's some amount of manipulation that would need to take place. So building on top of that foundation, we built these features like spatial join, and we're now poised, sort of in a position to really be responsive to what our customers are asking for. The other thing, when it comes to spatial data, it's not just shapefiles, but topo JSON, GeoJSON, KML, all these sort of standard formats that are shared through open data around the world. By the end of the year, we're going to have all those formats covered. So getting started with mapping in Tableau, it's not going to get much easier once we're at that point, right? Which is going to be this year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, traditional GIS versus modern BI. Maybe I'll say the radical thing, traditional GIS is kind of I'm motioning like there's a decline. It's just not the way in which people are going to be interacting with data, or it's not going to meet their expectations, and it's certainly not going to meet the sort of user experience requirement for the masses.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that?
Well, we've talked about this a couple times, and I think it's so true. Tableau does an amazing job of enabling people to explore their data. And I think it's one thing to go in and know, oh, I'm expecting to get this graph out, or this is the visualization that I'm seeking. But that playful, exploratory part is, I think, one of the things that makes it so powerful. And having the location be the anchor of that is important.
No, I totally agree. I think one thing I failed to mention too is, we often, the product folks at Tableau and some of the research team, we talk about how to make people really curious about the data or the visualization, or how to promote some kind of engagement. And sometimes it's as simple as move some UI that's not necessary out of the way. right? And let the data just be the only thing that's in front of the customer. But we think about how to really like make it a curiosity-driven application, right?
What happens if I push this button?
Yeah, exactly, right? Or to enable sort of like this highly interactive sort of exploration of data. So, the other thing I was just thinking about too is when we talk about building a data set and these best practices, it really is about like the authoring experience. Yeah, I mean, the defaults, right? Like, we really think about the ways and the flow in which someone can get to what they're trying to get to, and what are those best defaults for colors. I mean, we have, like renowned color experts who, tell me, don't you ever make that a rainbow? Don't you make that a rainbow? So, yeah, it's that's the kind of stuff we're thinking about.
Cool. I think in the keynote we covered, multiple different topics. You've been in this industry for a long time. When you think about all of the innovations and developments that are happening, what are you personally most excited about?
Yeah, what am I most excited about? Well, that's a great question too. I mean, I get excited about really big changes, and things that change the world for like a larger collective, like all of society, all of humanity. Like, we did something huge. That would be really exciting. And while we're talking about that, I don't want to drive anymore. So when we talk about autonomous vehicles, like, yeah, I'm good. Let's go there. I don't want to drive. I don't want anyone else to have to drive. Let's let an algorithm drive me around. That's really interesting because it'll be so disruptive to our lives.
Yeah.
And I'm really seeing it through a positive light. But business, how business operates, I mean, it'll just be transformed, right? When we think about some of the trends that people talk about with respect to data visualization and BI and I mean everything nowadays, I guess, machine learning and AI and natural language. I'm excited about those things too, but really from the perspective of how I think it's going to benefit human intelligence, right, and human creativity. So, has anyone read that Garry Kasparov book, Deep Thinking? Anyone know Garry Kasparov? Jim, raise your hand. I know you know him. All right. Garry Kasparov was the chess champion, the first chess champion to lose to a computer at chess, right? He lost to IBM's Deep Blue. And Kasparov wrote this book kind of talking about the chess engines and the AI aspect that computer scientists were looking at around how can we defeat humans at this game, right? And there's a few interesting things that come out of it, right? That even when the computer finally beat the human, that the computer was totally helped and aided by the humans that had trained it, that had put in some strategic wrinkles into the algorithm. Like, there was so much more to it than just, no, the computer was coded and programmed and it just did it. It's like, no, that wasn't the case, right? So I kind of see how that could relate to our future, right? In that, I really want to see humans and the machines and the algorithms work together, right? And create some things that can make us more productive and efficient and, but we need that human touch too, so.
Totally.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, and I would love to open it up to Q&A from the audience.
All right.
Who has questions?
All right, questions.
There should be a mic coming around. Yeah, here it comes.
Just shout it out.
Yeah.
I'll repeat it. I can't hear you. No, not a chance.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I think I heard you say earlier that Tableau will be bringing some spatial analytical capabilities like proximity and so on to the platform without topology? So I don't really understand how you could do that in a Tableau environment if you don't have topology.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that we're going to take some baby steps first. When we talk about proximity or spatial relationships or measuring distances, which were kind of the three things that I mentioned, I'm definitely making an inference to, using ST intersects, like this spatial predicate, is one way in which we're going to allow people to look at spatial relationships, right?
Built into the data.
She's asking if it's built into the data. Well, I'm going to say, we have 2 spatial data sets. We are going to understand their spatial reference, and we're going to be able to do some, that spatial math against them, right? That's one thing. When it comes to distances or understanding, what's nearest or something like that, that's stuff that we've talked about, but that's not on our immediate roadmap. And of course, when you can do calculations today in Tableau that allow you to calculate distances. So, we just want to make some of those things easier. When is it going to be there? That's a great question. I don't have an answer that will tell you exactly when. But thank you for asking. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for taking my question. If we think 10 years back when Esri was the only mapping company out there or the dominating company out there, but now as you see Mapbox is making maps and Tableau is doing all these awesome thing with maps. I was just wondering if I were a traditional GIS analyst, should I be should I leave the board of traditional GIS and start being a developer and start doing JavaScript and Python and all those codes? Or am I good for being a traditional GIS kind of guy? What do you think?
This is completely hypothetical, right?
Well, 50-50.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, if you're asking for my advice about it, I'll kind of stay true to what I think, right? Which, in traditional GIS, it really depends on what you're trying to do, right? You need to know what it is you want to do, and you need to have a few tools in your toolbox at least, because tools cost different prices. Tools that are used and shared by other people, it depends, right? If I'm going to do some work and share it, I need to know who my audience is and what they're capable of doing with what I shared. So, yeah, in some cases, using an Esri stack or Esri tools is perfectly fine for people who understand it, right? If you're moving forward, say in the next 10 years, I think a lot of people are going to grow up around a mapping and location platform like Mapbox, right? They're going to use other applications like Carto. They're going to use BI and visualization tools like Tableau. And they're going to figure out sort of what are the best things. Not any one of these tools or platforms is going to do everything, right? And certainly, you see with Mapbox and Tableau, there's definitely a synergy and partnership that's developed because we know they bring something to the table, this value to our customers, right? So if we can bring that in to our platform, I definitely think that sort of takes away that necessity or desire or need to focus on what the traditional way was, right? I'm definitely not trying to mince words. I still think there is a decline for traditional GIS. But I don't have data to back that. I don't know how many people use ArcGIS. I know, but how many people use QGIS, right? I use QGIS. It's a great tool. It does a lot of great things. So again, I got lots of tools in my toolbox, right? Yeah, should you learn how to code and be a developer? It depends what you're building and who you're going to build it for. And the answer might be, yeah, you might need to do that. So
I'm going to sign up for some classes tonight.
All right.
Thank
Get
you.
after it.
I think we have time for one more question.
All the questions are from the front left, the right side here. You lost today.
Power quadrant.
Just to reassure this young man, as long as there are map projections, the GIS analyst will not die.
There you go.
But that's not my question. Real-time BI. What is the real-time data right now in 2018 that's actually ready to go and useful for some everyday business scenarios? Are we talking traffic, weather, and whatever else?
Yeah, I'm going to say, Hannah, you have to help me answer this too, because for us at Tableau, the things I get asked about the most are those things, right? It's not it's not like airplanes or flights and stuff like that, right? It's not that stuff looks good, and if you're in that field, you care about aviation and the movement of planes. Mm-hmm. But what are the things that really affect the majority of businesses? it's the movement of people, and people are customers, or it's the movement of their assets, their fleets or whatever. Like, so yeah, when we talk about that real-time data, what is it? I mean, traffic and people. I don't know if that's like a cop-out kind of answer, right? But I really think that's true. But of course, weather. I mean, people like today, like it's sunny, tomorrow it's rainy, and all of a sudden discounts and promotions change, right? Like businesses are reacting in real time to these kinds of conditions, right? I know of customers who look at forecasts of weather and start to plan out promotions over 2-day, 5-day, 10-day, and it just cycles, right? As the weather changes, those things update. And around the country, at the same stores or same franchises, same retailers, different promotions are being, updated and added or subtracted because of the weather. So those things are totally relevant to all the types of customers that we serve.
Yeah.
I don't know if, for Mapbox, real-time data and big data is what you guys are, focused on.
Totally. And enabling people to put that data on a map and use it to make decisions. And I think both traffic and weather are really good examples because they are super relevant both for consumers and B2B applications. So, what am I going to wear today based on what the weather is the same, vein of questioning as how many people should I staff in my store based on the storm that's coming. So, yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, so I know we're running out of time, or we're way over time according to that.
Yeah.
If anyone else has questions about Tableau or anything Tableau, Mapbox related, I'm here. A few other people from Tableau are here. Just raise your hand. Ryan, Ashwin, Jim, any of us would chat with you. That'd be great.
Thanks so much for joining
All right.
us. Thanks all.